You may have heard of the economist John Maynard Keynes, and you may have heard of the economist Friedrich Hayek. But what did they stand for? And what is the difference in viewpoints between these economists? This I'm going to explain to you in this video. First, let's start off with John Maynard Keynes. Well, most of his big ideas were written in the 1930s. And his most famous book is The General Theory of Unemployment, Money and Interest. And in that book, he urged for the government to step in, to take action in the economy. To understand where Keynes' ideas come from, we need to go a little bit into the history. So, in the year before the 1930s, we had the 1920s, and people also call it the Roaring Twenties. Economic growth was going very well. The world was in a going great upward spiral. A lot of free trade, people were happy. But then there was a big economic crash, the Great Depression. At the time, the politicians were pretty liberal, free market thinkers. They said, no, we don't want to interfere in the economy. We should let the free market do its work. We should wait till the economy fixes itself. Eventually, the market will adjust to the new equilibrium and the economy will start growing again. So they waited. They waited. But the Great Depression, as this crisis was called, went on for longer and longer and longer. Eventually, people got fed up. And one of them was economist Keynes. He said, in a crisis, the government needs to step in. What the government can do, for example, is build a bridge to somewhere. This building a bridge can help in multiple ways. The building a bridge is of course infrastructure, which is great for the economy because it can connect two places with each other and they can trade with each other, boosting the economy. And building a bridge gives people jobs. And the people that got those jobs, they come home. Then they want to eat. So they buy groceries with the money they got from the job. So they spend the money at the grocery store. Then the owner of the grocery store, he gets the money. And he pays it to the workers there working at the grocery store, who then spend the money even further. And this is like a multiplier effect, where $1 spent by the government can generate extra dollars along the way. That's why Keynes said, sometimes you need a little bit of that push by the government. Let's print some money or let's lend some money to build that bridge, even maybe a bridge that's going nowhere, just to make sure that people have jobs again, that they get confidence in the economy again and get a little bit of that spending power. Keynes said that markets and people are irrational and that sometimes they don't self-correct and that the government needs to step in. Keynesian models are very popular and they're taught in a lot of university. One of the most basic macro models, the Y is C plus I plus G, which is taught in Macro 1 across the university across the world, comes from Keynes's book. And he's also called the father of macroeconomics, because before him, people were not really thinking about the economy as a whole and about the economy as a whole being in a depression or in a boom or in a bust. And Keynes really popularized the idea of the economy going through cycles of booms and busts. And that because the economy can be seen as a whole, the government also has some influence on it. Okay, then a couple of years later, after the Second World War, things changed a lot. The economy has already got a little bit better, but we also had some pretty awful dictatorships, fascism, Nazis. There was another economist that came on the rise, Friedrich Hayek, and he really disagreed with John Maynard Keynes. Friedrich Hayek, he was more kind of a free market guy. He said, well, yes, Keynes, your plans sound nice. Let the government step in, take over. Let the government run the economy for a little bit. It sounds nice, but if you take it too far, it doesn't work. He saw that in countries where the government runs a large part of the economy, the efficiency goes down. It didn't go too well. What he says, let's say you run an economy not through the market, but through organization, through the political process, through democracy. After a while, it becomes very cumbersome to let everybody vote on a particular issue. So you say, okay, we only let them vote for the big issues, and then the rest of the economy is planned by bureaucrats. But the economy is super complicated. Okay, we can build a bridge here, but is that the best use of our resources? By the time we build the bridge, maybe, we should have built a tunnel, and we have to do all kinds of calculations. And what he showed, he showed one thing first. He showed that democracy is a very bad way of organizing the economy, because how can you build a bridge if the entire country is looking over your shoulder and telling you what to do and voting to tell you what to do? So of course, what he saw is that bureaucrats, a lot of the time, they didn't put up their plans to democratic voting anymore. No, they just did them. And then, slowly but surely, bureaucrats were taking control. And what he saw, that it was like a slippery slope, where first you build a bridge, you decide by general vote to build a bridge, all the way down to the entire economy being planned by a dictator. He called it the road to serfdom. He said that government planning of the economy will eventually lead to dictatorship, or serfdom as he called it. And he wrote this book, The Road to Serfdom, I think in 1953. It's a pretty short book, at around 100 pages. And it's you have to read it. Like John Maynard Keynes, I understand if you don't want to read his books, because his books are super technical, very complicated. But Friedrich Hayek had a more understandable writing style. So Friedrich Hayek, I would say, for sure, it's very, not easy, but it's doable for people to read, I would say. Hayek also said that the reason why it's so hard for planners to do better than free markets is because of the knowledge problem. Hayek showed that the markets, they congregate all the information about people's preferences, about people's skills. By people working together, the market does a very good job of making sure that these preferences are met. But for some economic planner at the government who is not all-knowing, it's very hard to take all these preferences into account, all these skills, all these inner workings, all this trading. And he shows that it's basically impossible for a government planner to have more knowledge than the market. He also writes very clearly in some of his other books about this knowledge problem. And when you read it, it's super eye-opening. But John Maynard Keynes' ideas are at the moment very popular, for example, during the 2008 crisis. Hayek was very popular for a while, Reaganomics, Margaret Thatcher, but Keynes made a bit of a comeback. In 2008, when the economy crashed again, people were like, hey, the Great Depression, that wasn't so nice. Keynes helped us out back then. Maybe let's listen to Keynes again. So in 2008, huge stimulus packages hit the economy. And actually, the economy kind of recovered pretty fast after that. Same after COVID, where the government across the world hit huge stimulus packages. And that was like a win for Keynes, for Team Keynes. So maybe in the future, Hayek will make a comeback. Right now, Team Keynes is kind of winning, I would say, in the world. But who knows? I think that it always goes between the two. And in a couple of years, maybe Hayek is on top again. So as always, I'm not saying I have a preference. I just want to make clear what the differences are between those two economists. And I think it's for you to decide who you want to listen to the most. And I would always recommend reading directly what they have to, what the economists themselves have to say. And I just try to make this video to make it more clear for you. Okay, I hope I learned you something, and I hope you learned something, and me as well. And I'll see you in the next video.